Dan Myers here to tell you about State Farm Insurance agents Eric Means in Shakopee and Andy Hedlund in Rogers. When it comes to hockey talk, Gorgie and I have you covered. And when it comes to ensuring what is most important to you, Eric and Andy are the very best in the business. Both of these guys are hockey guys. Meansy, he played for the Gophers, while Heads, he played college hockey in Mankato for the Mavericks. Hashtag horns up. Meansy is my State Farm agent, and even though I live on the wrong side of the river, he's able to take care of all my home and auto insurance needs. So if you're like me and you live in that state to the east, yikes. Or maybe you live in Minnesota and you have a lake, home, or property in Wisconsin, call Eric Means in Shakopee and have him take care of you as well. 952-446-7067. That's 952-446-7067. Maybe you're a North Metro guy or gal and want to work with Andy Hedlund out of Rogers. That's okay too. Give him a call. 763-QUOTE-IT is the number. 763-786-8348. Or check him out online at thehockeyagent.com. That's State Farm Insurance and agents Eric Means and Andy Hedlund. Two guys that take care of us, and they'll take good care of you as well. Welcome back to the Sieve and the Scribe. This is episode 12. We are presented by Minnesota Hockey Magazine and State Farm Insurance agents Eric Means and Andy Hedlund. And Gorgie, it's fitting that it's a Gopher and a Maverick sponsoring this podcast this week, because I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a little hockey game out east featuring those two outstanding programs later this week. Lots to talk about, Kevin.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a hockey fan. We just wrapped up March Madness, Minnesota style, with all the state tournaments here, hockey-wise. And now we're into crunch time for the Wild as they head into the final month of the season. The college playoffs were spectacular, and the Frozen Four came up strong with Denver, Michigan, you mentioned Minnesota, and the Mavericks of Minnesota State. It couldn't have come up much better in terms of the who's who of college hockey all season long. The cream definitely rose to the top, and it's exciting. It's a great week to be a sports fan with all the happenings at Augusta with Tiger Woods and the Wild on the road and the college hockey. I mean, my head's spinning just thinking about it.
The college basketball national championship game, as we record this here Monday afternoon, is this evening. So again, you mentioned it. If you're a sports fan, it's a great time of year. That is Kevin Gorg, by the way, from Valley Sports North. Of course, you know him. I'm Dan Myers from Wild.com, and we've got hockey seasons coming to a head in multiple different directions. As Kevin mentioned, the Frozen Four commences this weekend from Boston at TD Garden. And we do know for sure, Kevin, a Minnesota team will be playing for a national championship game one way or another on Saturday night. It's simply a matter of which one is representing your sweatshirt there. The state of hockey. Minnesota State will take on Minnesota in the second semifinal of the night on Thursday evening. And the winner of that game gets to play the winner of Denver and Michigan, or as they say, all the Tostitos. And we've got not one, but two guests that will join us later in the show to talk turkey on the matchup. Minnesota State Associate Head Coach Todd Knott will join us in a few minutes to update us on the Maverick perspective. And we'll be joined by Gopher Assistant Coach Ben Gordon to chat maroon and gold ahead of the big matchup. But Kevin, first things first. We mentioned big hockey games, and the Wild is in the midst of a big road trip as the regular season's final month commences. Kevin, hard to believe, I know, because this hockey season has flown by. We are just under a month away from the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the Wild sure looks like a team trending in the right direction as the postseason draws near.
Yeah, if you're a fan of the Minnesota Wild, you've got to be enjoying what you're watching right now. It's been extremely entertaining. And thinking back to where we were just 2 weeks ago today, it was trade deadline day. You and I were at the Xcel Energy Center doing our normal routine on a game day. The Wild had a game that night, as I recall, and we're at morning skate, and one by one, Bill Guerin starts to push those chips into the middle of the table. And the cherry on top of the sundae being, of course, the final move, which was Marc-Andre Fleury, the Hall of Fame would-be goaltender, brought in. You look at the four guys that Bill Guerin brought in 2 weeks ago today, or at least the week of. Tyson Jost, Jacob Middleton. You look at Marc-Andre Fleury, and you look at Nick Delorier. All four of these players have fit in so seamlessly, Dan. And the chemistry is, I feel like it's even gotten better The confidence has certainly gotten better. The team is as you mentioned, climbing, trending in the right direction. You don't know until the playoffs start. You don't really get a reveal on whether these moves actually worked. But as we sit here 2 weeks later, I'll be hard-pressed to tell you that I don't think it's going to work because I love what I'm seeing.
And all four of these guys, Kevin, have made an impact. You look at Tyson Jost stepping into the lineup, first handful of games, he's down playing on the fourth line. But one of the things Bill Guerin said he liked about this acquisition was he's a guy that could move up in the lineup. And you look at the first two games on this road trip, a couple of games against playoff-bound teams in the Eastern Conference, Carolina, one of the best teams in the league, and the Washington Capitals. Minnesota's been without Matt Boldy, who's been such a spark plug for this team. No problem, right? Just move Tyson Jost right up into the lineup. He's been outstanding next to Kevin Fiala in the first two games of the trip. We may see him again Tuesday night in Nashville, but a point in each one of those games, Kevin, and a big goal in the win over Washington on Sunday night that pushed Minnesota's lead to 2-0. 2 goals in the first, 97 seconds or so in that game, and you knew right away the Wild was going to be in a really good spot to sweep the first half of those 2 road games.
Yeah, I feel really good about what Tyson Jost has brought this hockey team. And before he got moved up, I think he had made that fourth line better. They've been great. The week before we left on the road trip to end the homestand, I thought their fourth line had some really good shifts. Now, the games got a little disjointed with penalties and such, so they weren't able to be out there as consistently. But he has stood out as a player that can play with speed. He played center on the fourth line. He's playing left wing right now on the Fiala line, which is where he played for most of the year in Colorado. He's versatile. He can kill penalties, and he's got skill. He's a former first-round draft pick. So super impressed by that. And I just think, being that we were there that day, and when Bill Guerin made those moves, and it was more than just the move to get Marc-Andre Fleury. It was Delorier and what he brought, that sandpaper, that grit to the team. And then Middleton. I know the guys were excited about that move. And Jost had already kind of acclimated there. There's been an energy and some juice around that team all year long, but it got elevated that day. And you look at Matt Dumba and Marcus Foligno and the emotion they showed even that morning at morning skate and then into that night when the Wild played 4, 5, 6 hours later. It's been exciting to watch. And I've been doing this since 2006. We've talked all year here on the Sieve and the Scribe, but this is the best team I've covered. Well, they've taken it to a whole new level. And this weekend, really, I got to tell you, as good a weekend as I've seen, the way they controlled those 2 games, they won with defense and goaltending. They beat 2 quality teams on the road. Washington was rested and ready, and the rust was gone after 10 minutes of that hockey game. So that excuse goes out the window. Minnesota dominated that game last night. It'll be another acid test, with Nashville and St. Louis on the horizon to close out this trip. I can't wait to see playoff hockey. I can't wait to see what this group can do because of their cohesion, because of the way they play the game and this coaching staff. It's as good a chance as we've had to have a cup run in the history of this organization. And no disrespect to Wes Walls and Darby and the guys from 2003. This team, talent-wise, is built to make a run, and I'm really jacked to see what they can do.
If you're interested in learning about one of those newcomers, if you haven't listened to it already, go back and listen to episode 11 of the Sieve and the Scribe. We had a nice conversation with new defenseman Jake Middleton, who's fit in very nicely on that top pairing for Minnesota. Now, you mentioned the front half of the road trip has gone about as well as you could ask. Wins over Carolina, Washington. Now it gets a little bit meaty with Nashville and St. Louis, 2 Central Division foes on tap. As you can see, Kevin back home in Minnesota. He flew home today from Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, nationally televised game on Tuesday. You'll see him back on television in St. Louis on Friday night. I am in Nashville with the team. Marcus Foligno said after the game last night, Kevin, I'm curious if you agree with this. I'm sure you do. I know I do. Nashville's caused problems for Minnesota this season. 2 sort of lopsided wins at XL Energy Center this year. But this is a very different Wild team than the one that faced Nashville at the start of the last homestand, which was the last time the Wild lost a game in regulation. What do you think?
I loved his answer because if you break it down and think about it, when the homestand started, it was the Mikko Koivu jersey to the Raptors night. And Minnesota had been dominated by Nashville at the start of the season on home ice. And that night, whether it was the ceremony or the way they had kind of been playing in and out into that game, they were outplayed by Nashville. Then you page forward to that next game against Boston. I thought that this team flipped the switch that night against the Bruins and played a really sound, fundamental, defensive, structured game. They got back to their identity, and they've been building their game from that point on. Add those new faces and the juice of the trade deadline moves by their general manager. And I agree completely with what Foligno said. I was hoping he would get there because he was asked, frankly, about those two games and how do you turn that trend around in Nashville? Well, they're a different team. They're a much better team right now, and they've got something to prove. So off these two really impressive wins, a lot of times you think, well, they're on the road. They've got their 2-2 road trip already locked up. They're playing with house money. There might be a letdown. I don't see that happening because of the way Nashville has dominated Minnesota, knowing that both these teams are likely combatants of the Wild in that first round. If Minnesota gets home ice and they've got the inside track right now, one of these two teams is coming to St. Paul in that first week of May. So I think there's a statement that needs to be made, and I think they're chomping at the bit to make that statement this week.
As we sit here right now, Monday afternoon, all three teams have played 68 games, so we have an even sampling. Minnesota currently second in the Central Division, 5 clear of St. Louis, 9 clear of Nashville. You have to think, if you can find a way to have a perfect road trip here, it's going to go a long way towards the Wild settling the score and getting home ice, at least in the first round, no matter who they play. Now, I wanted to talk to you about this recent homestand. A record 9-game stretch at XL Energy Center couldn't really have gone much better. 15 out of a possible 18 points, a franchise-long 9-game homestand. Started off with a thud against these Predators on Mikko Koivu's number retirement night. And I don't know about you, Kevin, but you had to be thinking, oh boy, here we go. And this is, coming off a stretch on the road where Minnesota had sort of been, up and down a little bit, but 7 wins and an overtime loss later, the Wild became just the 5th team in NHL history to win 7 games on a homestand of 9 games or longer. And I know Joe O'Donnell mentioned this when we were doing a rink report a few days ago. You don't see many 9-game homestands anymore, but still, in the 104-year history of the league, it's only happened 4 other times. And had they won that game against the Penguins, they would have been the first team to win 8 games on a homestand that long. So pretty good company there for Minnesota. And when the story of this season is ultimately written, Kevin, that 3-week stretch in St. Paul, I think with all the wins, the tweaks that were made to the roster, it could play a big part in how this story eventually turns out.
It's funny you say that because way back when the schedule first came out and you looked at what the schedule would present for the Minnesota Wild, and you always look at the travel side of things. So, we're looking at when we're going to be in California, when we're going to be in Arizona. But then you start to look at the meat and potatoes of the schedule. And way back in September, we talked about that homestand. And it's like, wait a minute here. This is an opportunity. And I think a lot of times teams in these situations where they have a long homestand, there are always going to be more distractions at home. I mean, most of these guys have families, and you've got to punch in. You've got to be a husband. You've got to be a father. You've got to be accessible to your family and your friends, and you've got other things that you do. On the road, it's far more of an isolation where it's really all about the hockey and hanging out with your teammates. Not the case at home. And for them to keep that focus and to have that edge to their game for basically 3 weeks, especially after the way they had played game 1 of that homestand, that tells me something about this hockey team. That tells me that they can elevate their play come playoff time. It tells me they've got to switch. And the good teams always do, right? When you think about teams that make runs in the playoffs, they always have that next gear. Minnesota showed me something on that homestand, and I think they're continuing to build their game, and they want to be playing their best hockey here in April to get them ready for the playoffs. They've got a tough schedule in front of them outside of this road trip. They've got big dogs all the way through the month of April. Another date in St. Louis. You've got home games against Calgary and Colorado. So, yes, this is the perfect, I think, pre-course for what lies ahead, and I think they're handling it quite well right now.
Plenty more on the Wild to come over the next few weeks, but now we're going to turn the page and talk a little college hockey as that sport winds down its season this weekend with the Frozen Four in Boston. We'll look ahead to Mavericks and Gophers next on the Sieve and the Scribe after a message from our sponsor.
Sports fans, come on down to Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub for one of the best dining experiences around. Great food, an awesome staff, and amazing atmosphere is waiting for you just minutes from XL Energy Center on West 7th in St. Paul. Whether you're watching a game, attending a concert, or just out for a good time, Tom's is the place to be. Enjoy twofers during all live Minnesota Wild games, Viking games, and Packer games. Now serving breakfast on Sundays until 2 p.m. While dining, check out the collection of over 400 pieces of hockey memorabilia. Having a get-together? Let them cater your event. They have room for you in their newly remodeled back bar with extra parking in their brand-new parking lot. It's Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub. Give them a call, 651-292-9916. That's 651-292-9916 to schedule your next event. And check them out on the web at tomreeds.com. And if you see Tom, don't mention Ken Dryden.
The Functional Neurology Center is a Minnetonka-based clinic staffed by a caring and progressive team of chiropractic neurologists who are experienced in treating post-concussion syndrome, chronic pain, dizziness, whiplash, migraine, and performance enhancement. They are the concussion doctors that you can trust for your comprehensive brain health in Minnesota and who have helped many local professional hockey players that include Mark Parrish, Brock Nelson, Zach Parisi, and Tyler Nanny. The FNC combines innovative technological therapies with manual therapy to improve human function.
My name is Mark Parrish, and I played hockey for 15 years and professionally, and I had some concussions, some head issues. We heard about Dr. Schmo, and we're certainly glad I did, because the difference from not just session to session during the day, but from day to day has been drastic. And just with suffering from sleep depravity for years, the last 3-4 nights I've slept like a baby and slept again like I did before I had kids, for crying out loud.
You can find them online at thefnc.com.
We are back on the Sieve and the Scribe. And Kevin, the college hockey season is winding down with the final weekend of action. Always a sad one for me. As you know, I love college hockey, but it will be fun to see Minnesota State and Minnesota go head-to-head Thursday night to cap the first night at TD Garden. Should be a good one.
Well, you're going to be in attendance, and I just think that's spectacular that you get to take that in. There is nothing quite like the Frozen Four, and I think, like I mentioned earlier here on the podcast, that they've got the right teams there. I mean, Denver, Michigan, Minnesota, and, of course, the Mavericks have hovered around the top 10, the top 5, and for a lot of these teams at the top spot, you think of Michigan and Minnesota State, they've got to been taking turns along with Denver for top billings. So to see these four great programs come together in Boston, which is a great sports town. I mean, it's a great building. You know this. We travel to Boston. That's always a building that's juiced and loud, and there's energy in there. You mentioned it's sold out, so you're going to have, I think, a really fantastic setting to display college hockey. And I think because the basketball tournament's going to be over on the college side, and yes, the golf will be on during the day, I think you're going to have a big TV audience as well. Hockey fans are going to be able to find this, and I think it's going to be spectacular. I'm very, very excited to see who comes out on top. One thing I know for sure, any of these four can win it, and whoever gets the job done will have earned it. There's been no soft spot along the way.
You literally stole my thunder. I was going to tell you that the funnest part about this weekend for me, obviously beyond watching Minnesota State as a Maverick, is going to be the quality and the class of the teams in this tournament. Minnesota State, Michigan, basically been 1-2, I don't know, going back to maybe the end of October, save for a couple weeks, I think in early November, where Denver was the number one team in the country. Minnesota unable to crack the top of the rankings this year, but they've been hovering right around the top 5 virtually all year long. It's 4 terrific teams. You know, it's always fun to see the Cinderella story kind of, crack in every once in a while. But whoever wins 2 games this weekend in Boston, Kevin, is going to be a very worthy national championship. Now, looking at the 2 teams that we are most interested, the Mavericks enter riding a 17-game winning streak. Kevin, this team is 26-1 going back to November 27th. They've been the number 1 team in the country for much of the second half of the season. 37-5-0 record on the season. Minnesota, no slouch either down the stretch, 11-1 since the end of January. They captured the Big Ten regular season championship, and their only loss during that stretch, a 4-3 defeat at the hands of Michigan, one of the teams in the tournament this weekend in the Big Ten tournament final. Just a fantastic season from Bob Motzko and the gang in Minneapolis. And these 2 teams, longtime rivals in the old WCHA, get to meet in a big spot for the second consecutive year. How much are you looking forward to watching Bobby Motts and Mike Hastings battling head-to-head here?
Well, for us,
couple of
mutual
St. Cloud
friends.
State guys, right?
Yeah, mutual friends too. My high school teammate Herm Finnegan, longtime good friend of mine from my Burnsville days, was a roommate of Mike Hastings. I got to know Mike way back when he was a Husky. Known Mike Hastings forever. Have so much respect for both these guys and the way they run their program. They've got great people helping them build these programs to the level they're at. And, I think you look at what happened last year and the way that the Mavericks handled Minnesota. Minnesota's coming off an emphatic blowout win. Looked to me like they got off to a rough start that night, and the veteran team that Minnesota State had just kind of rode that early success and just shut down and frustrated Minnesota. I'm guessing Bob Motzko, Minnesota, learned something from that game, and I think it's going to be a different feeling game this time around. I think it was 4 or 5-0 last year. I don't see that happening this time. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a 1 or 2 goal game, and I think the Mavericks have the advantage of the veteran experience and the older players. Minnesota, I think, has the younger team, but they have the more upside when it comes to talent. The separator is going to be the goaltending, and Dryden McKay has done things in between the pipes that I have yet to see from a college hockey player. And I grew up watching Rob Stauber, who won the Hobie Baker. This guy is worthy of those kind of accolades. These numbers tell part of the story, but the way he plays and practices and how consistent he is, to me, defines what makes this program so special. He is a superstar in goal. And I think the story on the other side is worth telling as well. When your starting goalie jumps ship for the NHL in the middle of the year and you're left with a guy that's barely played, Justin Close has walked in and done an unbelievable job for Minnesota. Now, can he match up with Dryden McKay? Can he trade punches with one of the best goalies in the history of college hockey? That will, in the end, dictate who wins this hockey game, because both teams are going to have chances. Both power plays are very, very good. As a hockey fan, and I don't have a dog in the fight, I am a St. Thomas guy. I got 2 great friends coaching. I've got 2 great programs that I want to do well. I mean, I'm just going to sit back and cheer and have a great time watching a hockey game. It is going to be really, really good.
We'll break it down with our guests. First, Minnesota State Associate Head Coach Todd Knott when we return to the Sieve and the Scribe after a message from our sponsors.
The Sieve and the Scribe want to thank one of our founding sponsors, Tim Cortez Studio, for supplying the artwork for our podcast. Cortez is a famed artist and former Gopher goaltender whose work is prominently displayed on the exterior of Duluth's Heritage Sports Center in a series of 20-foot by 34-foot banners representing commitment, dedication, courage, honor, hard work, teamwork, integrity, and sportsmanship. Check out his art at www.timcortez.net. That's TIMCORTES.net, or follow Tim Cortez Studio on Facebook, where you can find commission work for the United States Hockey Hall of Fame and the UMD Bulldogs championship teams. Email timcortezstudios@gmail.com for more information.
Hey, pal, you already know that CrankyApe.com is the coolest auction site on the web for everything that rolls, floats, or has an engine. But did you know we'll also sell your toys for you? Why deal with sketchy characters, tire kickers, and no-shows when you can have the ape do it? It's a heck of a lot easier, and if you're not built like me, a lot safer too. Just go to CrankyApe.com and click on the blue burst. I'll take it from there. CrankyApe.com. Why monkey around anywhere else?
Welcome back to the Sieve and the Scribe, presented by Minnesota Hockey Magazine and State Farm Insurance. Agents Eric Means and Andy Hedlund. Kevin Gorgan, Dan Myers here, and we are joined by the associate head coach of the Minnesota State men's hockey team, Todd Knott, ahead of a very busy weekend for his club. MSU will take on Minnesota in the second national semifinal Thursday night in Boston. Coach Knott, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good to be here.
And Coach, we've got a lot of people that follow our podcast that are really big Wild fans. Dan and I are always trying to get different players or coaches on from the Minnesota Wild. So we dabble in college hockey because we love it so much. But for the folks that are listening out there today that maybe haven't seen a lot of your team play, just give us a 30,000-foot view of what the Mavericks are all about.
You know what? I would say honesty with the first one. We play a heavy brand of hockey, I believe, and that starts with recruiting. If you look at our D-core specifically, we've got a big group back there that defends from our net first with Dryden McKay. And we like a puck pressure game. It's something that we've been very consistent with this year as takeaway time and space. And I think the best defense is puck possession. So when we've got it on our stick a little bit more in our ground game, which we call it below the dots, I think that's been very good all season and something we like to stick to.
You always hear hockey coaches say that they want to play a game at their pace. You don't want to play at an opponent's pace. And one of the things that has impressed me with Minnesota State this season, it seems like you guys are capable of winning games any number of different ways. You have guys with speed and skill who can get up and down the ice. You can win track meets. We've seen that. But you also have the ability to win a low-scoring, grind-it-out, one-goal type game we saw specifically against Notre Dame in the region final. Just how nice is it this time of year to know that no matter how the story of a game goes, you feel comfortable that you can win, whether it's played up-tempo or whether you have to maybe slow it down a little bit?
Comfort's a great word for that, Dan. Just because throughout the season you just rely on your experiences. And I'll go back to our first weekend of the year when we had to go to UMass and down 3 goals in a hard place to play against another heavier team and finding a way to come back and win a game. And then some of the other experiences of having a guy like Nathan Smith out of a lineup. We've found ways to win games against some good teams with guys in and out, next man up approach. And I think we got to rely on that come this weekend.
The break is always something you look for during the season, right? The bye week gets everybody a chance to catch their breath. It's a high pressure job for you guys. The kids put a lot of pressure on themselves. They want to win. It's physical, mentally. You need a break sometimes. This time of year, when you're playing great hockey, from a coaching perspective, how do you look at the extra week off in between here? Is this a good thing to mend the boys physically? Is it a tough thing because you've got momentum built up? How do you handle it?
You know what? I think it's a great thing, but as a coaching staff, we drive each other crazy. It's just one of those that it's nonstop. Are we doing enough? Are we doing too much in that fine line? And we went through this last year. I'm going to try to draw on that experience, did a couple different things. Obviously, the non-COVID year, there are more distractions in a good way. I think our guys are getting the experience of frozen forward. There's a lot more people around. I've even got my wife and kids jumping on a plane with me. Last year, that wasn't possible. So we have a lot of families coming out. And so that piece of it's going to be a little bit different for us. But to answer your question, I think the week's off, but it drives coaches crazy a little bit.
Coach, one of the crazy stats for me going into that game against Harvard in the first round was just the fourth, actually coming out of that game against Harvard. It's just the fourth time all season your top line of Nathan Smith, Julian Napravnik, and Gordy's guy, Cade Borchard, were held entirely off the score sheet. In 2 of those previous 4, Napravnik didn't even play in the game. I think he was sick. It also aligned with the NHL trade deadline earlier in the week. Nathan Smith had his rights traded from Winnipeg to Arizona just a couple days prior. He's a guy who we're going to probably see in the NHL sooner rather than later, maybe as soon as next week. I mean, did you need to have a conversation with him at all after the Harvard game just to get him kind of dialed back in after what was a pretty crazy week for him? Because he and that line responded in a big way against Notre Dame.
You know what? We did have a conversation with him, and you made a good point. You even go to the Olympics. That kid, a lot of people forget what he's been through. From the time that he left, he was playing very good hockey, goes to the Olympics and the travel with that. Then he comes back. He's dealt with a little bit of an injury throughout the season also. And so that whole line, including him struggling, they would be the first to say that. Specifically him, very proud of how he handled the Saturday game. He scores the 1 goal in a 1-0 game. And I thought he played honest all night. And that's one of those games that a high-end skill kid can get very frustrated. Notre Dame can defend. And all your offensive guys, they want pucks. They want their touches. And you don't get that in a game like that. And I thought Nathan stuck to the grind that night. And he's going to have to, because we're going to have the same type of game Thursday. Everyone defends this time of year.
And adversity builds the strength you need to win at a Frozen Four. And I'd be remiss not bringing up the craziness that was your conference championship game. I've been around hockey now for close to 50 years. And in all my life, Coach, I've never seen anything like it. Myers was at the game, and he's texted me. And you guys think you've got a championship won. You're out there celebrating. There's a trophy presentation. And at some point, the goal is taken away, and you've got to somehow regroup, get the guys back on the ice, and go back and win it again. Take us through your emotions that night.
You know what? It's still a blur to me. Just because we didn't have much of a chance, you're going right into a regional. You bringing that up, I thought they did an amazing job. Bethany crew put that story together. I don't know if you followed that on Twitter at all, but taking it through the start to the finish, I thought they did a really good job. But it wasn't until Tom came on the ice, and this is after their whole team was removed. And all of a sudden, he comes back on the middle of the ice, and I didn't know why he was back on the middle of the ice, but I could just see I played for Tom. There's a look on his face, hey, there's some concern there right now. And then I started to hear that might not have been a goal, so I ran back with Luke Regner, hockey ops, tried to take a look. We weren't getting the replay we needed, and I walked back out on the rink, and this is where I knew there was going to be a little bit of an issue. Travis Winter is in our penalty box, and I played with Travis, assistant coach at Bemidji State. He's waving me over, and he looked at me and said, "That's not a goal." And I watched the screen, and without a question, it's not a goal. But I didn't even know how to respond to Travis. I just looked at him, and I walked out back to the locker room like, that's not my decision. I don't know what to tell you. Our guys have hats on. They have T-shirts on, celebrating trophies in the middle of the floor. Coach then meets up with Don Lucia. And he just kind of looked at me and said, Notter, you're going to have to go tell the guys we might be playing still, because he had to go deal with the video and what they were going to do moving forward. So I go in to the locker room, and it was like 25 ghosts when I said we might be playing again, fellas. And I described the goal a little bit and why it might come back. And credit to our fans, fellas. And Dan, you were there in social media, how incredible it is with everyone leaving 10 years ago or before Twitter. That would have been an empty barn that we played coming back. But there's so many people at the local bar restaurants that people came flowing back in the rink. And when our guys hit the ice, whatever that was, an hour later, there was energy with our crowd. And I really feel that affected our players.
And I kid you not, Kevin, and Todd, you were there. The folks that were there, I'd say there's probably, I don't know, maybe 1,800 to 2,000 fans maybe back in the building when the game restarted. And they were the 1,800 most passionate fans that were at the game, because everyone was standing. It was loud. There was cheering, and credit to the Bemidji State fans, by the way. They had spread out, and they had a big, kind of 2-section cheering section, kind of a socially distanced cheering section. It was one heck of an atmosphere, and just a great ending to a last game there at the Mayo Clinic Health System Event Center. Now, Coach, Jake Livingstone and Akito Hiroshi get a lot of the headlines on your back end back there because they're the big point guys. But when it comes to big numbers, and in terms of numbers in this case, I mean games played, Andy Carroll, Jack McNeely, Benton Mass, Wyatt Ahmet, the captain. Each one of these guys has played well over 100 games, some of them over 150 college games. Just how invaluable this time of year is it to have guys with all that experience really anchoring your back end?
That's been our strength all year, in my opinion. And I know Dryden would be the first to say it. Dryden does a great job, but those guys defend well in front of them. And it's the first time ever, guys, that we've dressed 7D and played 7D. There was most of the stretch this season. If you go over minutes with our D-Corps, your top guys are probably getting about 19, and all the way through 7, probably getting about 15 minutes. And that was consistent throughout the year. And so when you talk about playing a heavy brand of hockey, defending, I think you're allowed to do that a little bit more when you spread that out between your lineup. And, Jack McNeely, I think, is one of the most underrated defensemen out there. He's long, he's mobile, he's got a brain. Wyatt brings a little bit more of a harder chip on his shoulder. So there's a little bit of everything too. Andy Carroll, I call him crazy legs. He's all over the ice sheet, got a little bit more offense to him. So there's a good little mix there too.
Well, you beat Minnesota last year to get to the Frozen Four. Obviously, it's a different group of Mavericks. It's a different group of Gophers. As you look at this matchup, what are the challenges that the Maroon and Gold present for you guys?
Always talented. And Kevin, I was listening to you prior to getting on here, and I thought you did a really good job on talking about that team. They remember that game, as our guys do. So that's something that they're going to be prepared. And I thought we got after them early last year. And if you want to use the word surprise, I thought once we scored that first goal in the first period, we kind of rode downhill for part of that game. We're not going to surprise them this year. If you watch their regional, I thought they played a really hard, heavy game against Western. They showed they could be very stingy defensively. So I think you're going to see them defend a lot harder. They use 3 defensemen a lot, play a lot of minutes within that game. And then you've got the Nyes, you've got Myers, you've got some high end that can beat you on a power play. So there's a lot of things they throw at you that we've got to be ready for.
You've mentioned him a couple times in this conversation already, as has Kevin, but Dryden McKay, a Hobie Baker hat trick finalist for a second consecutive year. in my estimation, and yes, I'm biased, he's the best goalie in the country. And the people that don't watch him on a weekly basis, I think, underappreciate just how important he is to your club. They look at the box score and they see the lack of quantity, but they don't see the half a dozen grade A saves he's making every week, just based on kind of the system and the way you guys play. You'll give up a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2 to maintain that possession game in the offensive zone. Just how valuable has he been to your operation, not only this season, but over the past 4 seasons? And what is your case for him to be holding the Hobie Baker Award when Friday evening comes around?
Well, there's 2 things with that I believe in. One, that the very underrated, he knows how to win. Simple as that. I think goaltenders that have that ability, and we're not even going to know until we get to next year. And we've got a couple guys chomping at the bit, watching Dryden, how he approaches everything. But there's a confidence that he gives the 19, 20 players every single night that's unnoticed, that not by us, but by the average fan. Our guys play very confident in front of him, and then the timely saves what you just hit, whether it's on a penalty kill, and we will give up a 2-on-1 here or there, breakaway, and Dryden can go 5 minutes without seeing a shot, and he's mentally prepared to face that. And I think the timely saves that he makes for us to, again, help win hockey games, and that's something that you just can't. I don't care what position. I love seeing it in the goaltending position, but our whole group has found a way to find a way to win games this year.
Well, Coach, we're sitting here recording this on a Monday. You play in Boston on a Thursday. Without getting into the details of the itinerary, how does the week play out for your hockey club? Get us all the way to game time Thursday night, what the next couple of days look like.
You know, what fits well for us is it's almost identical to the regional because we played the Thursday with the day off. That's the first time that they've done that with the NCAA tournament. So we travel out tomorrow. You have your media day, your practice day on Wednesday, and then you're getting into a game on Thursday. So it fits almost to what we did probably, 10 days ago? Identical. So our guys have been through that. The only thing a little bit different, again, it's not one bus headed to the airport tomorrow, it's 3 buses. There's just more people involved with it, which is great for a community and, again, families, personally mine, and you've got players on the team with all kinds of families going out. So an incredible experience that they didn't get to see last year with COVID.
Well, Coach, I know I can't wait. I will be getting out there on Thursday morning. I'll be arriving from Nashville after 2 off days here, which will be really a whole lot of fun, going to a party-like atmosphere in Boston. Thank you so much for taking some time for the Sieve and the Scribe today. Best of luck, and I really mean that, please, because I've got a lot of trash talk on the line with a lot of different Gophers in my life.
Yeah, you certainly have.
But best of luck this weekend. Keep everyone healthy, travel safe, and we'll see you in Boston.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Todd.
That is Minnesota State Associate Head Coach Todd Knott joining the Sieve and the Scribe. We'll be right back with some questions for Minnesota Assistant Coach Ben Gordon here on the Sieve and the Scribe.
Dave's Sports Shop in Fridley, Minnesota, the top hockey shop in the North Metro since 1969. Specializing in custom fit hockey gear, top quality skate sharpening. We've got a full lineup: CCM, Bauer, Sherwood, True, Vaughn, and many more. We also offer used and new skates. We'll take those old skates in on trade for your new skates. Dave's Sports Shop, where the winners shop. Come find out why. Mention this ad to get your free skate sharpening.
Welcome back to the Sieve and the Scribe, and we are now pleased to be joined by University of Minnesota Assistant Coach and alum. Let's not forget that, Ben Gordon. Coach, thanks for joining us on the Sieve and the Scribe.
Hey, I'm honored to be here, guys. Thanks a lot.
It's got to be a fun time. You know, as coaches, we all live vicariously through the emotions of our players, and you guys have had, dare I say, a magical second half of the season. It's been awesome to watch the way your teams kind of come together. What's this been like from your perspective? Because I think you've got a pretty good seat to kind of watch this thing come together, and you're involved in the day-to-day. But I think, you know, to see it play out the way it has to be extraordinarily fun for you guys.
You're exactly right. I mean, every step of the way, it keeps getting more fun and more fun. You know, like you said, for me, I haven't been to a Frozen Four since I was a player a long, long time ago. And now, you know, it's a way more of a big deal. And it's there's a lot of pageantry that goes on a lot with it. And there's a lot of, you know, exciting times ahead for our guys aside from hockey. But, you know, like you said, I've had one of the best seats in town to watch one of the country's top teams progress into what they are today. And it's been cool to see. It's been a long road, but right now it's kind of on autopilot, and us coaches are kind of hands off, and the guys are kind of running the ship because our leadership group has been good, and it's been fun to watch this last month, and our players take ownership of it.
When Big Ten hockey started, I guess it's almost a decade ago now, it really seemed like the league as a whole, was down a bit, and maybe that's just kind of the ebbs and flows of building teams. But over the last few years, the conference as a whole has really come on. 2 teams in the Frozen Four this weekend, and a possible all Big Ten final should you and Michigan both advance. From your perspective, how has the grind of the Big Ten helped prepare you guys for this time of year and the big games that follow?
You know what? Like you said, I do think the Big Ten has gotten better every year. And I mean, the way that, players are being treated at Big Ten schools as far as, resources. And, we're very fortunate to have at Minnesota to have the things that we have. I know Michigan feels the same way. I know all the teams in our league feel the same way. And, with that comes good players and high profile players. And, as it grows, that builds into a top-notch league. I can't ignore the fact that early on in the season, we did play some NCHC teams that helped us prepare for, these tough games, those Duluths of the world and, North Dakotas and teams that play in these tough games and these big and heavy games. And those had prepared us too. But that in partnership with, our league climbing the ranks to be one of the best leagues in college hockey has been kind of a perfect storm. It's been very helpful for our group.
And Coach, you guys played a couple of heavy games here in the NCAA tournament. You beat 2 quality teams, but both those games were absolute grinders. You guys had momentum late in the year. You played in your conference championship game. To get a break right now, I'm sure it's great to heal up. There's a lot of bumps and bruises that behind the scenes the average fan doesn't know a thing about. From a coaching perspective, though, how do you keep your guys sharp and balance out the fact that they need a little time away too?
You know what? It's kind of funny. I think with our group, sometimes we're more so trying to pull the reins back on them. I think that's why our team has found success. We have an off day or, we have trouble keeping guys off the ice when we think they need the rest. So they're hungry to play hockey and they love the game, which is pretty cool. But, that's about the biggest problem that we deal with. The rest is going to be great and everybody's on the same playing field. But the biggest thing I think that we're doing is we practice Sunday and we practice today. We kind of tried to set up Sunday like a Monday so that leading up, it's almost like a regular week in the regular season where the Thursday when the puck drops against Mankato, it feels like a Friday night. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest thing that I think we tried to replicate. And did it work? I don't know. Well, we'll see. But it feels it hopefully feels a little bit normal to our guys, even though they're probably not heading into a normal situation. Something that's going to be a new experience for all of them.
When I look at the matchup between the Gophers and Mavericks, I see 2 teams that are built very similarly, groups that are 4 lines deep, 3 defensive pairs deep, and strong goaltending on both sides. When you're watching the tape, is that kind of what you see as well?
Yeah. I mean, when you watch the tape of Mankato, you see that they're well coached. You see that they're a sound, system type team that plays extremely hard. And they've been in these games before and we know what we're going to get. And, I do think that playing them last year in the regional is going to help us, and playing those heavy games last weekend is going to help us. Is it going to help us enough? I don't know. Well, that'll remain to be seen, but I do know heading into playing them, we're a little more prepared than we were last year, but they're going to be ready to, like I said, they're well coached and they're well schooled in their systems, and it's going to be a heavyweight fight back and forth. I got a feeling, and that's kind of what it should be this time of year anyway.
Teams get so much out of adversity, Coach. They, if they get through it, they gain confidence. They gain stability. College kids who start out maybe as youngsters at the start of the year become veteran players. It's rare that a starting goalie will leave for the National Hockey League middle of the season. LaFontaine did that. And with that's come a great opportunity for Justin Close. Watching it from afar, and Dan and I travel with the Minnesota Wild, so we're watching because we love college hockey as best we can. But take us kind of behind the curtain. How has he been able to come in and play at the level he's played at? And I think kind of re-energize your hockey team in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it probably is a little different internally. As weird as it is to say, you don't want to ever lose LaFontaine. That, as a dude in your locker room or as a friend or as a guy that's around, like he was a good person to have around here, not only just a good goalie. With that being said, it was kind of odd how when he left, nobody was too upset. Like, I mean, we in our locker room, I know our players and us coaches felt that Close deserved the opportunity and that he was going to succeed. There's probably some ups and downs early when you haven't played a game for 2 years. I can probably understand getting in the mindset of that might be tough, but he's handled it great. And we knew he was a good goalie, and, he found the mental part of the game very quickly. And, here we are, and, nobody really had any reservations about his game. We've known, he comes to practice every day. He works harder than anyone in the room. He is a top-notch human being. And, usually those types of people find success, and that's what he is.
In my opinion, Coach, college hockey is more fun, and specifically in the state of hockey, college hockey is more fun when Minnesota is relevant, like you guys have been for the last few years, and Mariucci Arena is full. And that's been one of the fun storylines for me, has been to see kind of this rebirth of Gopher hockey in terms of the fans, filling that place again and making it a really difficult place to play. You played there many years ago, but how fun has it been to see 10,000 strong packing Mariucci Arena this season and really, really making it a fun barn again?
That's a credit to our guys. I got to say that first. Like, not only are they winning, they're doing great out in the community. They're good citizens on our campus, and that all plays into people wanting to come watch them play. With that being said, now too, winning hockey games brings fans, and it's been electric. Like that game against Michigan and the last weekend of the year against Wisconsin. Like, I was standing on the bench as a coach in my dress clothes with goosebumps underneath, like full on. And it's exciting to see it look like it did, because when I was playing, it was full a lot of the time. And I don't know, there's probably a lot of factors that play into it, but I don't really care what they are. I'm glad that our guys got to, start to experience that. And it's kind of like you said, a resurgence, and it's coming back because there's no better place to play. And our guys got to experience some pretty magical games, and I hope it continues.
When you're a part of a coaching staff, you're certainly an extension of Bob Motzko, the head coach. And down the road, you're likely going to have your own team, your opportunity to be the bench boss. But when you work with a guy like Bob Motzko, I've known Bobby for decades. What makes him extraordinary and special as a coach? Because he's done some great things both here and everywhere else he's been.
There's a lot. And to be honest with you, half the reason I wanted this job, to come back to my alma mater and, it was a goal of mine, but to work with Bob and Rabs is, I knew I'd learn a lot, and I knew I'd learn a lot in a hurry. And I still am learning, and I learn every day. And that's probably the biggest attraction to coming back here. But I think Bob's feel for what's going on is the biggest thing that, like, I don't know if he can teach it. He just has a sixth sense as to what our group needs. Is it rest? Is it, these guys need to skate? Do we need to shorten practice here? Like, he's got pretty incredible feel, like in real time, as to, what our group needs. And like you said, I don't know if you can teach that. I'm trying to learn, but it's just, he's usually pretty spot on. And his intuition with, what our group needs at that very moment is pretty spot on. It's impressive.
Ben Myers has been one of the top players in the country for a couple of years now, a guy who, like Dryden McKay on the Minnesota State side, is one of 3 players in the Hobie Hat Trick finalists. Just what has he meant to your program over the years? And I asked the same question of Todd Knott about Dryden McKay, but what case would you make for him to be the guy holding the Hobie Baker Award on Friday night?
Without being said, obviously I'm biased towards Benny because he's here on our team and I get to see him every day. It kind of gets back to the Justin Close type thing that we just talked about, right? Like, you see it on the rink. I don't need to tell you what he does in the rink. He plays as hard as anybody. He's talented. He's a winner. But on top of that, he's away from the rink. What other people might not see is that he's a 4.0 student, or close to. He's a top-notch human being. And that's the reason, 2 big, huge reasons why he's finding success. You never hear anybody say a bad thing. That's because he's a good human being. He lives his life the right way, and he cares, and he pushes our team to be better. Those are all just as important as what he does on the ice for our group.
As you look forward to this matchup, Dan mentioned the name, but you've got a Hobie Baker candidate in goal for Minnesota State. And back when you played, that's an X factor. And Dryden McKay is different than the average top shelf college goalie. What do you tell your guys to get them ready for this challenge?
I mean, it's going to, like you said, I mentioned earlier, and coach has been saying it all week, and I kind of stole it from coach. It's going to be a heavyweight fight. And, the heavyweight fight usually, the pinnacle of that is right in front of the net. They're big and they're strong and they're heavy, and we're going to have to be that way in front of our net. And we're going to have to try to, go and fight the battle in front of their net, because Dryden sees it, he's going to stop it. And that's just, the bottom line. So we got to get uncomfortable, and we got to get in there and add a little element of, net front and down low grit to our game. And I mean, I know that sounds cliche, but that's the only way you beat a goalie like that and a team that plays that well defensively.
University of Minnesota assistant coach Ben Gordon joins us on the Sieve and the Scribe. Coach, best of luck this weekend in Boston. Stay healthy, travel safe, and we're looking forward to that matchup on Thursday night.
Awesome. Looking forward to it too. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Can't wait to watch you guys play. It's going to be a great game. Go on some fun, Coach.
Appreciate it.
All right, and that'll do it for episode 12 of the Sieve and the Scribe, presented by Minnesota Hockey Magazine. Our thanks to State Farm Insurance and agents Eric Means and Andy Hedlund for their support. Thank you, as always. Thank you to Zach Halverson for his great work behind the scenes. And a big thank you to Minnesota State Associate Head Coach Todd Knott, Minnesota Assistant Coach Ben Gordon for joining us. Best of luck to both teams in Boston this weekend. For Kevin Gork, I'm Dan Myers. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week on the Sieve and the Scribe.